What's up, everyone? Pittsburgh Weiss Schwarz coming at you with something a little bit different today. In the spirit of New Year's, everybody talking about resolutions and stuff like that, I wanted to take a swing at doing more of like competitive theory, things you can do to improve video. And I sort of boiled that down to 5 points, made them specific to Weiss Schwarz. I've spoke of and written about a lot of these things before. Some of these things might be super obvious, might be a little eye-rolly, but it's just some things that I wanted to get out there that I think might help people. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. And the number one thing specific to Weiss Schwarz that you can be doing to improve in 2025 is to use the simulator. Please use this thing. It is superior to playing on webcam in pretty much every single way. You can run it on anything. You can even get versions for phone. All of those bugs from the really early days are pretty much gone, and it's so fast to fix them even yourself and report them. You got access to your opponent's zones without asking. Camera, field of view issues, things like that. You get like the full waiting room, easily see deck stock, hand size, stuff like that. You can rapidly prototype, so you can quickly test your deck ideas or card interactions if you don't know how something works, or you have some cool idea that you want to test out. There's also fishbowling as the bots, which you can do at any time. You don't even need a practice partner. It's not real practice, but it's a lot better use of your time than maybe doom scrolling on Facebook or something like that. If you're going to do this, the Mushoku and Shion Aqua bots are better than the other ones. And it's actually interesting. It is decent to limit test your deck for accelerated games because the bots do like the dumbest, most aggressive plays possible, especially like in the first 2 turns. The other big thing about the sim is you can test stuff long before it comes out. So it's directly responsible for my success with Like a Record Premium at WGP. Yes, that deck wasn't very different, but I was able to go through multiple iterations of the deck, go through multiple different combos of what I wanted to play, and land on just like, okay, I'm going to play the pants instead of the new combo, instead of the old door combo, things like that. You can test really far ahead. There's plenty of resources out there for new card data files that aren't in the quote-unquote official releases. If you poke around, they're easy enough to find if you're in any of the discords, and you can even code cards yourself for quick tests. I've been coding Azure Lane 2 stuff like just at a time. You can see from these little screenshots here of just stuff that I whipped up for my own testing. And the number one things I hear people is just like, oh, I really like using physical cards. Oh, I tilt when I misclick, and the cards are coded weird sometimes. I just don't like them. All bad excuses, honestly, bitch-made excuses. Don't punt using the best tool our community has ever had for dumb reasons like that. Get in, start using it, get used to it. It is the best tool that you can use to get better at this game. Like, just straight up, it's the best thing we ever had. Shout out to Blake and everybody who's ever worked on it. Best thing ever. Okay, moving into more just like general competitive stuff. The other big thing you can do is you can track your play. You are going to have to crack out a spreadsheet. You don't have to get super crazy. You don't have to be like this nerd in this picture there. All you really need is like columns for win-loss, the matchup you played, and like your notes. And your notes don't have to be super crazy detailed, but you should always include any instances of like super positive or negative windfall on both sides. So when you're sacking or your opponent's sacking, or something goes really bad for you or something goes really bad for your opponent, make sure you note those as well as the matchup and everything else you're doing. And that little bit of data can go a really long way in sort of identifying what you should do next. So it helps you ask the right questions about, like, say, your deck, say, your build, or your play patterns. So, like, an example I have here is like, oh, it seems like I lose a lot of matchups in locals or casuals when decks put out a big board at level 1. Is that a common case, something that I would run into at regionals, or is that just something specific to my local meta? Is that not something I'm worried about? Little things like that, just a little bit of data, a little bit of tracking. Doesn't even have to be a spreadsheet. It can be like a notes app on your phone. Just some kind of notes on your play can help point you in the right direction so you're not wasting a lot of your own time. Another big thing is VOD review, and the simulator makes this a lot easier. Get some footage of your play, watch it back, look for your own misplays, then watch it back with some other people. Ask them about your plays, ask them about the plays of the opponent, ask about the matchup, and then if you can, watch it back with the opponent from the video and get their perspective. What were they thinking? What were they expecting you to do? Things like that. All this can be like considered tracking your play, and it's super helpful. Other big thing, and this is huge, I see people do this all the time. I see people scoop in Weiss all the time, more than they ever should. Actually play out your bad games. You can win games where you open 5 climaxes, where you drop 5 climaxes. You can win those games. I've had those games. I've had those games in regionals, and I've won those games in regionals. It's hard. Because playing from ahead in Weiss is actually typically pretty easily. Playing from behind is extremely hard, and you're never going to develop that skill unless you practice it. If you scoop bad opens, bad games, just go, oh, I just not, things aren't going, blah, blah, blah. You just write it off. You are never going to develop the skill to play from behind. You're never going to develop the skill to play out of rough opens. And when you have to actually do that, when you're in tournaments, you're going to be behind everybody that does put time into playing out their bad games. Big part of this is recognizing the difference of playing out those games or playing for your out. Don't just go through the motions and wait to lose. The correct plays in these games where you are behind are going to be much less obvious, far harder to navigate. It's going to be a lot harder just for you to even recognize what they are. So playing out all of your bad games, even when things go terribly, just don't scoop. Just don't scoop unless the game is literally already over. Like, you know your deck clean, you're out 8, your opponent presented a swing for 4, they triggered and you're 3-3 or something like that. Those are the only times when it's actually acceptable to scoop. Play out the rest, or you're never going to be able to effectively play out of these bad games. The other thing that playing out your rough games helps with is it's going to put a lot more emphasis on those choices to accelerate or slow the overall game state. And it's going to give you a better, quote unquote, like smell or read when you sense that your opponent is experiencing some instability. Because when you're in these games where things aren't going optimally, things aren't going well, it's going to make those individual choices a lot more apparent. Like, if you choose to accelerate when your opponent wasn't really in that bad of a spot, you push for a ton of damage, they cancel, and now they're super far ahead and you're super far behind. Things like that. It's a lot more obvious when the games aren't going super well when these choices are correct or incorrect. And the other big thing that actually playing out your bad game is going to help with is going to help you develop anti-tilt strategies. This is different for everybody. If you're somebody who tilts out and gets frustrated when things don't go well, the more you play from behind, the more you'll be able to develop your own strategies to keep you off of tilt. This is going to be different for everyone. Everybody has their own ways that they keep calm during play. So I don't really have any specific advice here, but playing out those bad games will put you in those situations where you're more likely to tilt. And the more often you're in those situations, the more you're going to develop your own possible coping strategies. Another big one, sort of riding off the last two that we have here, is to be better about losing. Losses are more valuable than wins 99% of the time. Think back to every time you had a crazy landslide sack win. How much did you actually learn from that game? Probably not a lot. You still want to play to win, but you want to mostly play to learn. You play to learn while playing to win. Another big part of this is correctly identifying what variance actually is instead of just deflecting everything that goes bad to quote unquote randomness. It's really easy to just throw your hands up, say you got sacked, but it's really hard to sit down, go back through that game, and work through the real reasons why you probably lost. I did write like a full article about like identifying variance. I'll link it in the description. Goes into a lot more detail here, especially with Weiss. Even when you're tracking your games, it can be really hard to identify specifically in Weiss, like what you should say. Okay, that was variance. I made the right plays, but I still, lost on the river, et cetera, et cetera. So I did write a full article on that. You can check that out. Not necessary though. The big thing is just, instead of throwing up your hands and saying you got sacked, go back through the game, try to find things that you could have done better. This one is major. Tilt. Tilt is the mind killer. You need to develop a stronger mental, especially to play Weiss. Nothing is going to lose you more games than being frustrated, angry, and salty. Nothing is going to lose you more games than that. Developing your own strategies to stay off tilt at any cost is paramount, especially if you're going to play this, because you're never going to win every game, and that's okay. You play any game with variance, Weiss, poker, any trading card game, you're going to have to hold L's. And you need to learn to be content with making the right play, even if the result doesn't pan out in your favor. Everyone loses on the river. It is normal. It is a normal thing. You make the right plays, you still lose. It happens. Tracking your play can help with this, though. Can help you contextualize your results. You don't want to be too results-oriented. You still want to be playing to learn, because the wins are going to come as a byproduct of you learning. But tracking your play can help you contextualize those results. Be like, okay, this is what happened in this game, in this matchup. When I did this happened, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, being better about losing in general, just staying off tilt is massive, 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 massive. And the last one here is literally just knowing when to take breaks. Grinding is a great way to improve quickly, but it's also a great way to burn out. And if you find yourself tilting a lot and you're someone that typically doesn't struggle with mental, you have a strong mental, that's a big red flag that you're burning out and that you need to take a break. Take time to decompress. TCGs don't have a quote-unquote athletic element. Like if you play other esports games, like things like League or fighting games like Melee, Street Fighter, things like that. There's an quote unquote athletic element to those games that you need to keep up your tracking, your tech skill, things of that nature. TCGs don't have that. So you can take time to decompress. Time spent processing your thoughts can be just as valuable as training, because you don't have to keep up that quote unquote athletic element. So take advantage of that. Learn to recognize when taking a break is stronger than continuing to grind. I didn't play a single game for the entire week leading up to Houston BCS, where I won this past year, because the main thing that I was worried about was overthinking, changing cards from a list that I've been playing forever, getting in this like toxic loop of terrible negative feedback loop where I'm like, oh, I need to change this card, that card, that card. You don't need to change any cards. I've played all these matchups. Let's take a break. Let's decompress. Let's be a little bit more confident in the evaluations I had already made and go from there and just take a break and enjoy hanging out in Houston. That ended up being the correct play. It's important to recognize when taking a break is stronger than just continuing to grind and maybe end up in a bad headspace. Other big thing here, don't pass up on like your social or familiar opportunities to like grind card games. This game's been around for 15 plus years. It's not going anywhere. No matter how much Bushi messes up or does dumb stuff, the game's not going to go anywhere. If the game is going to cut into your time with family and friends, that is another big red flag that you're approaching burnout. So just take that time. Take time to be with your family, be with your friends, especially now over the holidays and things of that nature. Don't just be like grinding card games. Not that I think anybody's going crazy over something like Weiss, but you can sort of apply this to anything, competition. Just know when to take a step back, decompress, and then just come back stronger than ever after you've taken a bit of time. And that's going to be it for this one. Just a quick one here. I know this one's a little different, and I kind of talk about this stuff sort of like interweaved in a lot of videos and podcasts and things where I talk about competitive theory. I've written a lot about stuff like this on my blog, things of that nature. It's just something that I wanted to get out there and talk about. Let me know what you think. Might be a little bit off base, might not be exactly what people are looking for, but we had this little bit of lull in here with the new year. Seemed a little bit on theme with New Year's resolutions and that of improvement, and looking forward into 2025. So before we get into all that new juicy content like set reviews and deck techs, I just wanted to get this quick one out there just to sort of set the tone for the year, how we're going to approach it. Because now that we're back in it, I'm going to be trying to make content every single week again, get stuff out there every Friday. Just wanted to sort of experiment with a little thing. So let me know what you think. Definitely coming in on that Riaz energy a little bit. I'm going to link his channel down in the description. He's been putting out some banger videos with a lot of confidence and energy, and I kind of wanted to do something like that. And with that, Pittsburgh Weiss Schwarz signing off. Have a great new year, and we'll see you in the next one.